This conference will now be recorded.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the AnCan High Risk Recurrent and Advanced Prostate Cancer video chat for Monday, May 15, 2023. I'm Len Sierra, and I'll be moderating with a little help from my fellow moderators. Let's first express our gratitude for our sponsors, Bayer, Pfizer, Myovant, Janssen, Myriad, Telix, and Foundation Medicine. And we're going to start with, well, Ben, you want to start off for the webinar announcement, and then we'll go to Susan?
Sure. So for a lot of us, our most powerful cancer fear is not when we'll die, but how will I suffer, how badly, for how long. We don't encounter much information on this, though we hear scary stories. A webinar is coming up at the end of the month titled "As the End Nears: Dying with Metastatic Cancer." It'll talk about the final stages of metastatic cancer, including treatments, symptoms, and the physical experience. It's worth mentioning that the organization behind this webinar, Compassionate Choices, many of us have wondered whether we can receive medical aid in dying if our suffering becomes too great. Thanks largely to that organization, Compassionate Choices, 11 states now allow medical aid in dying, and the fight continues. And Susan, our special guest tonight, is very active in Compassionate Choices, which is why she's joined us now. Susan?
Can I just give a quick introduction to Susan, and then we'll bring
Please
her
do.
in, because I really think she believes it. You can put your mic on, Your Majesty. It's fine. So, going back a long time, I think 2015 or 16, Susan was a regular in this group, largely on behalf of her husband, God rest his soul, Ron Silverio. And we loved her. And Susan is a health professional by a healthcare provider and a health professional by profession. And she was sort of retired, but not 100%. And Ron used to run the house, and he was like the mayor, and everybody knew him. And as he got sicker, Susan got more involved, but Ron never came to the group a whole heck of a lot. He did, but not a whole heck of a lot. But Susan always came. Now, Susan says she calls herself the Queen of Denial. She wasn't really in denial. And I call her the Egyptian Queen, the Queen of Denial. And or now Your Majesty. And when Ron died, we decided to put together a care partners group. We've been thinking of it, and Susan came in as a moderator, and she's been moderating that ever since as our lead moderator, and she's amazing, and she has the biggest heart you could ever imagine. And some of the care partners for people here have joined, and we encourage all your care partners to join. She wrestles with her own problems with her eyes at this point in time. With what's the condition, Len, that your sister has?
Glaucoma?
No, the
Macular degeneration.
yes, macular degeneration. So she
That's
wrestles.
what I have.
Oh, that's what you have. Okay.
Yeah.
Susan wrestles with that too, and so anyway, she is a long time supporter and a very generous financial supporter of AnCan, and we love her. And so when I saw this email, I thought of Susan, and then Ben sent it to me today, and Susan will tell you why it's so pertinent. So maybe tell us a little bit about Ron and Compassionate Choices and where you are in trying to get the Ron Silverio bill passed in Delaware. You got to turn on your mic. There you
Sorry.
go.
Very coincidentally, we're having a public hearing tomorrow for the bill, so I'm madly working on my testimony to try to make sure I have it straight and sort of try to memorize it. So it would be hard for me to read at this time. I've done it in the past, but anyways, that doesn't matter. Um, and I think Ben said it really well. I don't know how much you guys have discussed it, but having the option. So the day Ron was diagnosed, the very first day that we found out that his cancer, when we found out he had cancer, it had already metastasized to his spinal column and his hips, and we knew he was going to die. At that point we thought he would have less than a year, but still, that very first day, that's what he wanted to talk about, end of life options. We talked about a lot of different things. We researched a lot of different things, and eventually got involved with the Compassion and Choices organization. Um, if you're lucky enough to live in one of the 11 states that have that available, I would urge you to check into it immediately. If you if you don't live in those states, contact Compassion and Choice anyways. They have they provide a lot of support. There's a compassionchoices.org, I think. They may tell you about some of that in the webinar, but they have a great website. There's lots and lots of good resources. And so I really encourage you to do that. Just quickly, medical doctoring allows if it allows a doctor to provide a prescription for you that if you've got 6 months or less to live, if you're an adult and you're mentally competent, you have to go through a lot of hoops. So you have to have 6 months to live, I think, by the time you have to have, your doctor has to approve, somebody else has to approve, depending on your state legislation. But, and then they give you medication that if the going gets too tough, that you can take medication um, to peacefully end your life. And for Ron, it was about the journey, and it sounds like for you guys too. It's not a lot of the focus is on people talk about the last couple of weeks, last week, whatever. But for me, I try to talk about the journey. Ron worried about this for 5.5 years. I honestly believe he would have lived longer if he had known right from day one, okay, if things get too tough in the end, and it may or may not, but if it gets too tough in the end, that you have this option available. So that's sort of it in a nutshell. Um, Please don't hesitate to contact me. Again, I urge you to contact Compassion and Choices. Anybody has any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I wish you the very, very best for the rest of your journey. And please have your care partners join us in the care partner group. We'd love
Yeah.
to have them.
So in case you didn't catch it, the Delaware bill, Susan lives in Delaware, Dover, Delaware, and the Delaware bill is
Oh yeah,
named
it's the
is
Ron.
named up.
Yeah, it's the Ron Silverio Heather Block End of Life Options Act for Delaware. So, we ended up getting involved early on, and Ron, of course, made an impression on, just because of who he was, made an impression on one of the key guys working with Compassion Choices. So we're really honored to have the bill named after Ron.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rick, for remembering to say that.
All right, Donna. Any questions for
Yeah.
any? Go ahead, please.
Susan, this is Peter Kafka over in Hawaii.
Oh, hi, Peter.
Hi. So question is, I just lost a guy, a good friend of mine, a couple of weeks ago. What's the real difference between going that way and ending your life in hospice, where you're under heavy morphine for dealing with breakaway pain, and just going out that way? Um, if you've got like a week or 2 weeks going out, is there a real difference? I mean, I think this guy ended his life probably in the right way. Um, I happened to see, I was able to see him while he was still lucid, but another 4 or 5 days, he couldn't, he was pretty drugged out and not really with it until he left. Um, what's the difference really?
Well, everybody's situation is different. I know you guys are all on the journey, and every person's situation is different. Ron, oh shit. Oh, sorry. Okay. Um, I'm not sure if I was on or off, but so everybody's situation is different. In Ron's situation, he was home. He walked to the bathroom the last day he died. I mean, he was home right till the end, and in pretty good control, with everything. But so the difference for us would have been that would have been something that he would have been able to use at home, and would have, you know, um, would have been lucid, conscious, whatever. Because the one thing about this is you have to take it yourself. Somebody doesn't give it to you. It's not like a Dr. Kevorkian thing. You have to be able to ingest the medication yourself. So you have to make a conscious decision that this is what you want to do. The big difference, primarily the difference, is knowing, in my mind, in knowing that if things get too tough, that this is a choice that you can have. You may choose never to use it, but okay, I can get through another day. It's not too bad today. I can get through another day. And and so to me, that was the primary situation, that you could be home, um, and or even, I don't know what the rules are if you were in hospice, if you would that would still become a choice. I would i, I don't know. I'm not going to I kind of address that. um, I do know in Delaware, I have a very good friend I have two friends who are dying here in Delaware, people that I know personally. And one person is in a nursing home right now. Well, he's in rehab right now. They're trying to send him home, but he can't go home, and hospice won't allow him to go there because they said that they don't do um, any kind of, it's very short term at hospice. So somebody has to say you get less than a week to live or 2 weeks to live or something. I don't know. I just can't even believe that this is the situation. But, but anyways, that's getting out of,
Yeah, I
you
guess the only thing that I did, Ron like have a going away party? Did he invite his friends before he?
Ron, this was not legal in Delaware. Ron did not have this option.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
so
Is
we're,
your
we're,
experience? Do
we're
people have like a departure ceremony? I mean, do they invite their friends? In hospice, usually people gather because they know someone's days are numbered. But I'm
right.
wondering in this situation whether people, would invite
There, there was a
people
woman.
before they pull the plug.
There was a woman who came testified the last time we had a hearing, the last time we had testimony, and I remember her talking about her dad in New Jersey actually went out with friends the week before and did that. I'm sure just like the journey, everybody does something different. Some
Okay.
people might just want to have their family by their side. I'm sure there's not a party where you take the medication and and
Right.
and leave at that point. But I mean, maybe somebody's done that, but
Yeah.
it certainly would give you an option, mostly so that if you know, that you know that you don't have to worry for all the rest of your life that you might be suffering at the end. That way you know.
Thank you.
So,
You're so welcome.
so if anybody wants to reach Susan,
Yes.
send me a note, rd@ancan.org. I will put you in contact. I do want to recognize that this is still a very controversial subject. There's chatter going on in the chat window. I know that not all of you are in favor.
Yes.
AnCan's belief is that people should have a choice. You don't have to adopt this. You don't have to believe in it. You might find that for you it's morally inappropriate, but other people are comfortable, and we just want people to have a choice. And when you've sat by and seen as much pain as some of us moderators have, we really feel that choice should be available to you if you want to avail yourself of it. And so we are in support of compassionate choices as an option. But we certainly recognize it's not for everybody. Anyway, at that point, we've
Rick,
got to move on. Yes,
let me just say one more quick thing.
yes,
Some people still think of this as assisted suicide or suicide. It's not suicide, and that's been recognized by all the powers that be, because people who are terminally ill don't have a choice. You're going to die. It's not up to you. You're going to die. So it's really not. It's not suicide.
right,
It's
right.
it's just preventing unnecessary suffering in the last few days of your life.
You're
Good
like,
night, guys. Thank
all
you for the
right.
talk,
Good luck.
and thank you. Yeah, wish me luck for tomorrow.
Good luck for tomorrow, and I'll see you tomorrow night in the
Yes,
Care Partners
yes.
group. Good
Okay,
luck,
good
love.
night. Good night, guys.
Bye.
All right.
Good night,
Thank you,
Susan. Thank
Susan.
you.
Good night.
All right, we're going to move on to a new member, John Babb. John, as
Okay.
I mentioned to you earlier, I'm going to ask you a series of questions and just address each question as they come up. So tell us how old you are and where you live.
I'm 81 years old. I live in Purcell, Oklahoma, which is just outside of Oklahoma City.
All right, and how did you hear about AnCan?
Toll Allen,
Oh,
or
that's right.
Mr. Allen.
Right.
I don't know his name. Okay.
Good friend of ours. Okay, and John, when were you first diagnosed? What year?
Okay. They did biopsies every few years for probably 10 years. And then in 2011, my PSA just jumped high. They did the normal 12. Anyway, May of 2011 is when it's first diagnosed, basically.
Okay, and what was your Gleason score at that time and your PSA?
9,
Gleason,
and my PSA was low. It was only 14 something.
okay. Um, and where were you seen? At what institution and which doctors?
Dr. Forrest in Tulsa, Oklahoma, at an association there for urologists. I saw him. He was my
Okay,
wife in Tulsa, Oklahoma. St. Francis is their affiliation, St. Francis Hospital.
right. And did they do a CT scan and an MRI
Yes,
before they?
they did. I had 4 scans. Uh, first, the first 12 samples they couldn't find it, so the doctor put me to sleep and took 36. out of the 36, they found that, 3 or 4. It was on the outside of the prostate. So then they started doing scans, bone scan, PET scan, a lat and CT pelvis, abdomen with contrast, chest X-ray. Yeah.
Okay, and
Like
John, what did that show? What did the
nothing.
scans show? Nothing at
They
all.
couldn't see it. They just couldn't see it.
They couldn't even see it in the prostate?
Oh, when they took the prostate out, they could see it. And they could see it when they biopsied the area where it was.
Okay, so you had a prostatectomy. What year was that?
I had that in August of 2011.
Okay. So what happened after that, John? What was your did you
Okay,
have a
after I had my,
recurrence?
pardon?
Well, after you had the prostatectomy, what was your PSA?
It dropped down to 1.7. And then the following month, September 2011, I had radiation treatment because when they took the prostate out, they found it in my lymph nodes. And so I had radiation done, this external EBRT tomo is guided radiation at 38 of
Okay.
them. And it
So they
stayed,
radiated your pelvic region.
yes,
That's where the lymph nodes were. Okay,
they were shooting the lymph nodes. That's what they wanted.
sure. Well, how many sessions did you undergo?
38.
Okay. And how did your PSA react after that?
It stayed down to basically undetectable. For the next year, it stayed below 0.04. And then in July, it jumped to 0.14. And they did another NM bone scan whole body, looking again. My PSA went up to 36, and I was on Lupron. Once they did the radiation, I went on Lupron. So then I stayed on Lupron until I had quite a few vacations off of Lupron. 2015, I had another set of scans, and it stayed basically undetectable. Or below 0.75 was my point to go back on to Lupron when I was on a vacation when I quit taking it. And I stayed on that until so I was on
Well,
Lupron.
John,
Pardon?
hold on just a minute. You said that they did scans in 2015, and what did they see?
Nothing.
Nothing. Okay.
I,
Same scans like CT, MRI,
yeah,
traditional
it
bone
did.
scan.
Have to find that again. Yeah, MRI, total body scans, pelvic X-rays. Yeah, and then I just stayed on Lupron on and off until 2020. June of 2020, it jumped up again, little, 0.6 is all it went to. They took an Eligard and it jumped to 0.9. and my doctor said it was castrate resistant. So,
Okay.
so then I had my testicles removed because I didn't want, anyway, I did. They did a MN bone joint image, whole body, found nothing. CT, ABD, and pelvis with contrast, didn't find anything. Did a bone density, didn't find anything. And they did a oxium PET CT scan from the base of my skull to mid thigh.
Right.
Oxium's, I know you know what oxium is.
Yep, we do.
It's,
Axiom.
yeah,
Axiom. Yeah.
found nothing.
Hmm.
So I've been on Extendi
Right.
ever since, still on it.
So
And
since
heart,
July 2020, you've been on Xtandi.
no, I went on Extendi in August 2021.
Okay. And you're still on it now.
Yes,
And what's your PSA?
it's undetectable.
Yeah.
Testosterone is undetectable. Uh, next month I have another series of scans, but they just can't see it. They
Hmm.
don't see it, which I guess is
Have they
good.
ever done a PSMA PET scan? Polarify?
C CFMA.
P as in Peter, PSMA.
TSMA.
Yeah. Have they ever done that?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay. Well,
What
right
is
now
that?
you're
Oh,
undetectable, is it?
yes, sir.
Okay. So do you have any questions for us, John?
No, I just want to hear other people's questions. I will stay on this regiment until something happens. But
Yeah. How about genetic testing, John? Have you ever had um, either
no,
germline, which is
have,
inherited testing? Never?
have not.
Okay.
I talked to my doctor about um, where they take your blood, send it to the lab, they fix it where it'll fight cancer, then re-inject it to you. Uh, the name of that
Provenge. Provenge.
Right.
Provenge. Yeah,
Provenge.
Provenge.
Provenge. Yes. Anyway, he said no, it has to be on your bones before they'll approve it. And this has been 4 months ago, and I
Yeah.
intend to
It
talk to him
doesn't have to
again
be
about it.
on your bone. Your doctor's wrong. You have to
I know
have
he is.
three. He, you have to have three successive increases in your PSA once you're castrate resistant. It does not have to be on your bone.
Oh,
When did you have the
well,
Provenge?
He did not. He hasn't had it, Len.
I've not
Oh,
had it.
okay.
Uh,
There's something you talked about with the doctor?
yeah, he said I wasn't eligible, but what you say about having to have your PSA increase, my PSA does not increase. It stays undetectable while I'm on this
Right.
extend day.
And what we've seen some guys do is to manipulate, and they go off of you can go off of the enzalutamide. You get three successive increases, and at that point you get your Provenge. But if you've got a doc who doesn't want to give it to you, then you've got a problem. What sort of doctor is this guy? What
Is
type
he a
of doctor
GU
is
medical
this guy?
oncologist?
Are you talking to me? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Yes,
we're talking to
John.
you, John. Did you Is your doctor a specialist in prostate cancer, your medical oncologist?
Yes, he is. He's a urologist at the University of Oklahoma, well, Stevenson Cancer Center in Oklahoma City.
So he's a urologist. You've never seen a medical oncologist.
No, I have never. Before I started on this Extendai, I had a second opinion in Dallas at the University of Texas Southwest, and that because anyway, I did not think that the test was good. That oxygen scan was good. I thought my PSA was too little. Well, I just wasted my time. I didn't find anything, so I'm here.
I'm curious, what did Tall Alan tell you? Did he give you any advice before sending you over here?
He advised that I look into this Provenge.
Provenge.
Okay.
Provenge.
Okay, I don't know the word. Like he says, sooner better than later. But and I talked to Jonathan Levi at the University of California, Los Angeles, I would say, and I've just when I went on this Extendine, he basically didn't go into it much. So I'm just gathering my wits together again and looking for suggestions like you've given me. I'll look up this TSMA scan. I don't know what that is. I can
Yeah.
go.
We would recommend that you stop seeing the urologist and start seeing a medical oncologist who specializes in prostate cancer. We call that a GU medical oncologist, GU genitourinary medical oncologist. Urologists really shouldn't be treating you at this stage. They're surgeons, and you need a medical oncologist. A medical
Okay.
oncologist he'll know about PSMA scans. He'll know about Provenge, which I think most of us here would agree that that's a pretty good strategy for you once your PSA starts rising. Or as Rick suggested, you could take a little mini vacation from the Xtandi to let your PSA rise enough so that you qualify for the Provenge. That's up to you, though.
My
But
question is, do I go to the medical oncologist at Stevenson Cancer Center where my urologist is, or do I need to go to another location?
Rick, that's your bailiwick.
Oh, you need to find a genitourinary medical oncologist, and I doubt that there's going to be one at Stevenson. They're probably general practitioners. So I don't know if Mike Yancey is on the call today. I don't see him. But they're few and far between in the Oklahoma City, Tulsa area. So really, you're going to have to find somebody outside of the area who will be willing to work with somebody locally for you. But because what's going to happen if you go to the person in Stevenson, they may not know enough about prostate cancer. A couple of things here, John. The PSMA scan is not going to be of use to you until your PSA is higher.
Yeah.
So don't same thing with Aximin. Aximin won't tell you anything when your PSA is low. So that's not what you need. Right now, probably makes sense to do the Provenge, which as Len said and Alan said, and you need to find a GU medical oncologist who's willing to do that for you. I don't know where in or who prescribes that in the Oklahoma area, but that would be our advice. I mean, if you come back to us and give us the names of the docs at Stevenson, we can tell you if they have a specialty in genitourinary and prostate. But I can't think of anybody right now for you in the Oklahoma City area.
I can research that and find something.
Okay, you need a medical oncologist who has a specialty in prostate cancer.
You say he's a GU medical oncologist?
Right, and GU stands for genitourinary.
Oh, okay.
Okay, genitourinary includes the prostate and the bladder and the kidneys and all of that. And so they're
Okay.
usually, you want one who specializes in prostate in particular, but most GU medical oncologists do specialize in prostate. In the bigger centers, they're more specialized. You might get somebody who does mostly bladder work and very little prostate, but by and large, that's what you need. Now, we can direct you to others in Texas, in Nebraska, in Chicago, but that's what you need. That's who's going to give you the best possible treatment.
Should I look at going down to Anderson in Houston?
Well, we would probably send you could go to Anderson, or we have another doctor in Houston that we like a lot, but Anderson is a good option. There's another doctor at Houston Methodist who spent 15 years at Anderson, and she's very, very good, especially with older guys. So but Anderson or Houston Methodist would be a good option, yes.
And what is this doctor you're referring to? What
Her
is her
name
name?
is Her name is Dr. Efstathiou, Efstathiou. There is something called a
Okay.
chat window here, John. If you look at the top right, there are two little squares. If you click on that, it'll open a window and people put information in there, and I can put her name in there. And somebody has already put in genitourinary medical oncologist. We would recommend either Dr. Korn is very, very good at CORN at MD Anderson, or Dr. Aparicio at MD Anderson, or Dr. Efstathiou at Houston Methodist. All of those are good options.
Okay.
Hey guys,
Okay.
it's John. I have a question. Could somebody clarify for me the definition of castrate resistance and how John meets it?
Yeah,
Well,
it's castrate resistant is usually defined, and please feel free, anyone else, to correct me afterwards, because I'm not right, but it's usually defined as meaning that your PSA continues to rise on a single first line anti-androgen like LHRH.
Oh, I see. That's where I got confused. So
Okay, so it is
the fact that he's responding well to an androgen pathway blocker
right.
doesn't get him out of the category of castrate resistant.
No, I mean, most of the time, I mean, it gets complicated today because in the past, there were, I mean, in the past, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, 2010, we really didn't have these second line
Yeah.
drugs like abiraterone or enzalutamide. Those were the first two that came. And so the definition of androgen of being castrate resistant was developed before then. And so most of the approvals, when you're talking about approval and having to be castrate resistant, it means only using an LHRH. Now, with monotherapy and all the other things that are going on, it gets to be a little complicated, and then the discretion of the payer. But for the sake of Provenge, it was only it was only the LHRH drug that was considered, like Eligard or Zoladex or Lupron or whatever.
Or
Of course, in John's case, because he had an orchiectomy, he would not be on any drug. But if his PSA started to rise with an orchiectomy, he'd be considered to be castrate resistant.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that was established before they put him on Xtandi. His PSA was rising on Eligard, I think it was.
Yeah, it should have been, but there was no period between Eligard. 4 months later, it went up a small amount. Actually, what I consider small. It went up. Went up from 0.61 to 0.94, and he said it's now castrate resistant. That's why I went down to Dallas to. I did not believe that, but I got hold of a bad doctor, and it didn't work. So, okay.
All right, John, we're going to move on. We've got
Sure.
a bunch of guys on tonight, so I hope you're okay for now. Join us after you switch to a medical oncologist and let us know how it's going, okay?
I for sure will tune in.
Or even
All right.
before. And I wanted to thank you for having all that information available. It made it much easier tonight.
Yeah, thank you for that.
John, have you registered with us? Have you signed up? Are you getting a reminder from us?
No, in fact, I think I talked to you last week, but it was on the wrong day. And you looked up and said, yeah, you're registered. But no, I do not get a reminder. So I best go back and make sure I'm registered.
So I'll make sure, if you give me your email address, I'll make sure that you get a reminder.
Okay, do you want it now?
Yes, give it to me right now, and we'll go from there.
Okay, it's JB Skyatuk. SKIATOOK at Gmail.
Yeah, I did put you in, so you should have gotten it. You should have gotten a reminder for this meeting, but
No.
it might be going into your spam, so you'll have to make sure it isn't going into spam. Okay?
I did not
And
check that.
yeah, please check it. And are you a veteran?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll make sure we have a veterans group, and that might be helpful for you. That also might be another way for you to get Provenge. We have a veterans meeting. The next veterans meeting is on the 25th. And I'll make sure that you're ticked off for that, and maybe we can give you some help, and so that you can coordinate your veterans benefits together with your private benefits.
Okay. Dr. Stratton, my urologist, he actually practices over at the VA. I'm 100% disabled. And so he said, why don't you move it there? My comment was, I wanted better control over it than what
Well,
VA.
we can talk to you about that, but even if you're
Okay.
at the VA, you still need a medical oncologist. You don't need a urologist. That's the problem.
Yes, I agree. I know what you're saying. I will go that direction. I promise.
Okay. Okay.
All right, John, we're going to move on. Thank you. Now, Rick, Dave Gailey.
Dave Gailey is, I put a note in. Dave Gailey's been with us before.
Okay, so we're not going to go through the newbie questionnaire. You have his history?
Yes.
All right, so Dave, why don't you just fill us in on what's happened since you were last with us?
Yes, thank you. I be happy to do that. Appreciate the time. I actually talked to Rick a couple of days ago, I think, Rick, about my current
Right.
situation, which was, in my mind, quite positive. I was diagnosed of 2019 with metastatic prostate cancer, and my PSA at that time was 27. And I went through a course of chemotherapy and close to 2 years of ADT, uh, which was effective in reducing my Mets to undetectable. Uh, and for the last 2 years, I've been on no treatment. I've been on a treatment holiday, and my PSA has gradually risen to around 6. At about 2 weeks ago, I had a PSMA PET scan, and it confirmed that the bone mets that I had in the past, the bone mets had still not reappeared, and that the cancer, according to the PET, was confined to the prostate gland. And so my plan had been, I guess, consultation with my oncologist. Uh, you might call it watchful waiting, that to monitor the PSA and its rise. If it went up rapidly, we'd probably do another PET scan. Otherwise, we probably would not do a scan for another 12 months or so. When I visited with Rick, he had alerted me to the fact that, well, before, I guess part of the logic from my oncologist is that because I had systemic prostate cancer, there was likely some circulating cancer cells in my blood, and so in terms of localized treatment to the prostate, he didn't recommend that. But Rick, you had mentioned perhaps the group could be helpful, and that there's some new thinking research that at my stage I should be thinking about radiating the prostate. And that's my question is whether or not it makes sense to, well, makes sense is if there is some evidence, some studies that suggest that my life would be prolonged by doing radiation. I hesitate to do that because of potential side effects. But uh, and from what I've seen in the research that I've done, which has not been a great deal, overall survival, I believe it is. By doing that, might be an additional, number of months. So anyhow, that's my question relates to the group's feeling, knowledge, evidence concerning radiating the prostate where you have had numerous bone mets and you're now in, you might say, some type of remission.
Ben?
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Dave, I had asked you, the PSMA PET scan that you recently had, was that the first you ever had?
Yes,
Okay, did they, and you said it detected nothing, oh, it detected only recurrence in the prostate gland.
right. I the continual occurrence, I mean, it was still there.
Yeah. Um, did they do any other scans like a CT, MRI?
No, no,
Because
they didn't.
some people don't produce much PSMA, which may have accounted for it not detecting metastatic sites.
Right. Well, they did do a contemporaneous, perhaps I didn't describe it completely, PSMA PET CT scan, and the
Yeah,
CT
yeah.
scan was negative as well.
Yeah, those
So,
CT scans that they do at the same time as the PSMA are really a different type of CT scan, really just for locating where your organs are, to help them locate where the organs are. But I mean, it sounded to me like you have a prostate that's intact, and that which would explain why your PSA is around 7, and they don't see anything beyond. I mean, you should also add that you have a very, very good um, medical oncologist, Dr. Antanarakis, and I
Right,
believe you and Peter have gotten together in the past as well. I think
right.
Peter Kafka. I guess the question, guys, and the reason I suggested Dave should attend is because nowadays we often see men with metastatic, especially de novo metastatic men, who get the primary treated either with surgery, like Carl Foreman, who's on today, or with radiation. And I don't know who's here right now that was de novo metastatic, and then they went back in and they treated the primary. Is there anybody on the call who today who had their oh, Larry Fish has got his hand up. Larry, why don't you talk about the pros and cons of
Well,
treatment?
um, I think we've been, my doc and I, we've been talking about this for a number of years, and finally, after I did a Polarify, I identified additional lesion in the prostate, or identified a active lesion. So I jumped on the opportunity to go back and ablate the primary prostate primary site. Although de novo, I found my cancer appeared in my bones. I didn't know anything until I felt pain in my hips, and I had cancer throughout my bones. And then uh, we treated it, and been quite a while before my PSA started to go up again. It went up a few times. We declared it castrate resistant, and we added darolutamide, and went for that I went for radiation to one met in my spine and in my prostate. So my feeling is it was pretty beneficial because my PSA, while it hasn't gone down to undetectable, it's gone down from whatever it was down to 0.05, 0.05, 0.06, 0.05, 0.07, 0.05. It's been doing quite well with darolutamide, I stay on Lupron, and that radiation I had in the fall. So I think it's a good idea to go back, and my personal opinion is, if I had to do it again, I would have radiated the prostate even earlier.
To address Dave's situation, in Australia, when someone doesn't show too positively in the PSMA scans, they do an FDG PET-CT. It gives you some balance as to where the cancer might be if it didn't show up and it's not PSMA avid. So that's a possibility. I've been through a bunch of radiation to my prostate, high dose rate brachy plus external beam, and that was 2010. And my prostate stayed pretty clear since then, but the cancer spread outside my prostate. So it's a whole different issue for me now. But in terms of Dave's situation, if it didn't show up as a PSMA avid, or did, but not anywhere else, second task might be to do the FDG PET-CT.
Yeah, I mean, certainly a good suggestion. I mean, we like to see them look for concordance all the time, but it doesn't happen on a regular basis. I've just been listening to a whole bunch of recordings today, and the docs talk about concordance and when they do the PSMA scan, but a lot of the time they just don't do it. But I mean, you could certainly talk to Dr. Antanarakis about an FDG scan, but I think the bigger issue is not so much are you PSMA avid, because we're not really talking about the Pluvicto treatment for you. At this point, the real question is, do you treat the primary, and then if you are not PSMA avid, is there anything else showing up?
Okay.
I have a
Len?
question, Dave. Did
Yeah.
you say that you're on a drug holiday right now?
Yes.
So I'm puzzled why Antanarakis would say, no, let's not treat your prostate because you have systemic disease, and yet your PSA is elevated and he's not treating you with anything. That isn't logical to me. He should, if he's deciding that radiation is not going to be helpful because you have systemic disease, and then he's not treating you for systemic disease with hormone therapy, for instance, unless he proposed it and you declined.
No, I think, Len, that the thought was perhaps that my immune system has been able to keep the cancer in check, so to speak, that the meds that were in my body have been in remission. They're not to be found. The scars are there, but that I've had 2 years without treatment with no progression, and that I have had a very strong response to ADT. And should there be a evidence of a spread, if you will, I could go back onto ADT, for example, and hopefully the response would be as strong as it was the first time.
Has
I
your
don't think that there's been a discussion with Dr. A about treating the primary yet, Len.
Well,
Oh,
I guess
I thought Antanarakis dissuaded you.
he didn't bring it up as you might say, a logical thing to do right now. And perhaps in fact, Rick, I think that's where perhaps the question is this old thinking that, for example, I was not a good candidate in the Stampede study for treating the primary because the Mets were more than 4 or 5. And so we did the chemo and the ADT, and that was it. And my response with regard to the Mets were quite positive, thankfully.
Right. So does anybody want to talk to whether it's old or new thinking about, about treating the primary?
I would say it's newer rather than older thinking. The older thinking was, no, don't bother, you've got systemic disease. The newer thinking, and it's not that new, but at least maybe 5 years, is that it is beneficial to treat the primary. That's my understanding.
Well, that's kind of what I'm looking at, Len, and I'm wondering if there are any definitive studies that demonstrate there is a benefit to that. I'm not aware of them, and that would be helpful to talk to Dr. Antonakrakis about. That here's a study that shows if we treat the mothership at this point, it's going to extend my overall survival.
Yeah.
Well, there's many, many people that have had radiation to their prostate, and they've gone years and never had a recurrence. So that's radiation is a proven factor. The question, you can question whether you want to do it. That's a whole different
Yeah,
thing.
but
But the
this
other,
is a
well,
different situation.
concept,
With
please.
respect, this is a different
Right.
situation. This is a situation where we're talking about your metastatic. You didn't have radiation, there was no problem, but now you've got a metastatic man. Do you treat that metastatic man with radiation? The old thinking was no, never. The new thinking is maybe you do, and we've had a lot of men like Larry Fish and others who never had any treatment to their prostate, and then you come in later on and you treat them. Now, the question that Dave Gailey's asking, and it's a good one, is are there any studies? I think there are. I'd have to look. I don't know. Does anybody have a link on here? Ben, you're usually very good at finding those studies. This is where we need Herb, God rest his soul, because I know he researched it and he did find studies before he went for his treatment. Cliff, you have your hand up?
Yeah, was the Stampede study part of that research? That I know I had I have metastatic, of course, and I had radiation treatment after the fact to my prostate, 26 sessions, and
Right.
I told that I was on the Stampede study, so I thought that was the same thing.
So the Stampede study had so many arms that you could have been in an arm on the Stampede study that has them. I don't think it's reported yet, but I could be wrong, where they treated that you were de novo metastatic, meaning you were diagnosed with metastatic disease,
Right, yeah,
but they still decided to radiate your prostate.
exactly.
And so you're another example of where they did that. I think what Dave is asking for is, has anything reported that he can show to Dr. Antonarakis? Dr. Antonarakis will be very familiar with this, but
Right.
it's always better if you've got, I don't know, Ben, can you find
Right.
anything? Or
What
does anybody have a reference?
if I might interject one thing with regard to Cliff's comment, my metastatic, I did not qualify for the oligo study because I had too many Mets. So
Right.
I think that was and I'm not sure. I mean, it's a good question. What difference does it make whether or not now I should radiate the mothership? It was not a good option suggestion when I was diagnosed in 2019 because I had too many Mets, and so the old thinking of systemic treatment was still a standard of care. And Rick, as you mentioned, if there's anyone that has a new study or a new reference that I could discuss with Dr. A, I would much appreciate that.
So I've just found something in my, thank you. John Madden just put something in there from SWOG, so that could be good. John Antonucci. And I just found something that Prostate Cancer Foundation put out, more evidence for benefits of radiation therapy in metastatic prostate cancer. And it refers to some initial results from the Stampede clinical trial, but that's low burden. That's the oligometastatic. But I'll put it in there for you. But what I would suggest is, let me put it in. What I would suggest, Dave, is you can open all these windows right now.
So I
Just
would
click
go
on
to
those
chat.
links, and you can read them later. See if there's anything helpful. So just Henry put something in for you, and John Antonucci and John Madden. So just stick them, open them all up and take a look later and see if there's anything that's helpful there.
Okay. So do I look in the chat? Is that where I?
Yes, the chat is the two square boxes in the top right. Open that,
Okay.
and you'll find a bunch of links at the bottom. 1, 2, 3, 4 links at the bottom.
Okay. And will
And if
those
you
stay there once the
click on
session?
them right now, and they'll open in your browser, and you can look at them later.
Okay. Thank you, Rick.
Peter Kafka, you want to comment?
Yeah, wouldn't the fact of chemotherapy qualify for treating the primary as well as distant Mets? I mean, chemotherapy doesn't pick and select where the Mets are. It treats the whole systemic system. So isn't that treating the primary as well?
Well, that you're right, Peter. I mean, I did have systemic therapy of chemo, and so now the question is whether I had to have local therapy with radiation, which is not, I guess, considered systemic. It's
Right.
considered specific. I mean, to the prostate.
I think the answer to your question, Peter, and it's a good one, is that when these men get their prostate treated who are de novo metastatic, it's usually post chemotherapy. Like with Larry or with, I don't know about Cliff, but certainly with Herb, it's all post chemotherapy.
Dave, did your PSA ever become undetectable?
No, it didn't, Peter. If that was you asking,
That was Len.
Len. Len, I've always had my prostate producing PSA, so I got down to I believe 0.6 approximately.
0.6. So now it's 6 or 7, right?
It's 6.3, I believe, was the last
Okay.
test.
So, I mean, to me, that suggests that you have a recurrence. And actually, the PSMA PET scan proved that you have a recurrence in the prostate. I don't see why you wouldn't treat it.
Well, I think it's again the old thinking, quote unquote, and think Dr. A mentioned it, that there is still a pattern of thought where since I've had systemic, it's very likely that I still have circulating prostate cancer cells in my system, and it's only going to be a matter of time before they show up again if I don't get more systemic treatment. And so the recommendation is when they do show up, that we'll do some more ADT and hopefully knock them out again.
So I think we should move along, Len, but just again, a quick show of hands. And if your camera's off, please put your camera Arnold, you can even raise a hand is fine. How many guys who were de novo metastatic, meaning when they were diagnosed, they were metastatic? How many of you have had radiation to the primary since then? So I see Stan Freeman, I see Cliff Collins, I see Dennis. That's 1, 2, 3, and anyone, and Larry 4, and John, Jim Barnes 5. So Cliff Collins. So you can see, Dave, there's quite a lot of guys that have done that. So if I were you, I'd open the conversation. If it were
Right,
me, I'd open the conversation with Dr.
right.
Antonarakis.
If I might just ask, in terms of qualifying that survey, how many of those had more than oligo, you might say, had, half a dozen or more Mets?
Yeah. Again, if you had Larry did, Dennis did, how many? Anyone else have more than 4 Mets when you had the radiation?
Had the Christmas, we had the Christmas tree, right, Cliff?
I only
Chris.
had 3 Mets.
All right. Okay. So you only had 3 Mets. So you were probably in that Stampede oligo study, but there's
Yeah.
2 or 3. And certainly, if I can speak for Herb, Herb had more than 4 Mets for sure.
Well, thank you for your time. I don't want to take any more time.
Okay.
All right,
Yeah,
thank you, Dave.
I had hips, clavicles, shoulders, spine, prostate.
Right. So just open up those links. And back to Len. Go ahead, Len.
Okay, let's go to Todd. Todd
Hello.
is facing a decision on radiation. Go ahead, Todd. He originally had HIFU. Uh, how long ago was it, Todd?
It was April of last year, and at the time he thought I was a Gleason 7. Then University of Chicago found out it was an 8, and then MD Anderson found out it was a 9. So I don't know. That's what happened.
Yeah, these are the experts, right? A little scary.
Yeah, a little scary.
Okay, so tell us now what your dilemma is. You have a
Well,
rising PSA.
well, the PSA is now down to 1.5 from because I started on ADT back in 425. I started on ADT, and it was at 7.7 on 414, and then 5.2 it went down to 1.5.
Right.
So just that was like 2 weeks, I think, not even like a week and a half, I guess, or a week. It went down from 7.7 to 5.2, and I'm having a blood draw tomorrow to see where it's at that point. Um, but in a nutshell, in the last month since I was on last, I've been to Dr. Guanchel is agreed to be part of the team, and Dr. Schmolwitz is part of my team at University of Chicago, and Dr. Hahn at MD Anderson, and all 3 of them are happy to help me and work together and consult together and all that. So I feel really good about that based on your guys' recommendation of make sure you're with the right doctors. So that's all good, and I've had just about every scan and that you can possibly have. And so right now I'm waiting to consult again with Dr. Schmolwitz, and also the radiologist that he works with, Dr. Lau. And that happens on the 19th and on the 23rd. And once that happens, the radiologist, Dr. Mayo, which I think is a pretty funny name, seeing she's at MD Anderson, but Dr. Mayo, the radiologist there, thinks that I should go ahead and be radiated in like 3 months, assuming that the PSA is down to next to zero, which was the first time I had heard of something that soon. Everybody else had been talking about 6 months. So I think that's one of my questions is because I mean, obviously, what I'm being told is that um, you definitely want to wait till your PSA is down to zero or real close to zero, and you definitely don't want to wait so long that your PSA starts to go back up again. And who knows when that is? I guess is basically the situation that I'm in. I guess the general belief is that in 6 months, that's a really good time to have caught it at zero and soon enough that it's not going to start going back up again. Is that accurate?
Well, everyone is different, of course, but you have responded very, very well to ADT so far. Did you say you were also on a second line anti-androgen?
I'm on Zytiga, Relugulux, and prednisone.
Right. Okay. So the question is, do you think 6 months is sufficient course of hormone therapy to go along with the radiation? Is that the question?
No, ADT, they're saying it will be 2 years, regardless.
Oh, okay.
That's
Okay.
what I'm being told.
I think the question then is, how long do you have to be on ADT before you can start the radiation? And what Todd is saying is he's heard that generally people are on for 6 months, and yet the doctor at Mayo is saying 3 months. Is 3 months too short a time? And I think the answer to that, as far as I know, and definitely you can talk with the Dr. Lau and Dr. Shmulowitz about this, is that usually they want you on ADT for at least 6 weeks to 3 months before you start radiation, because they want the cancer weakened. And so I would say any time after 6 to 8 weeks is what I've seen before. I don't know that you'd have to wait 6 months, but what other people's experience in a recurrence. I mean, of course, Todd's is a fairly strange recurrence, but other people's experience. Anybody want to
8
say
weeks
whether?
in my case.
Go ahead, John.
Sorry,
Dr. John.
sorry if I talked on top of you. Yeah, 8 weeks in the case of my radiation oncologist.
Right. Thanks, John.
Dr. Roach wanted at least 3 months, and he preferred 6 months. That was 4 years ago.
Okay. Did he say why? Any reason? Did he give you a reason?
He said that you need at least 3 months, and a bit more was okay. It was good.
Well, for one
Okay.
thing, the hormone therapy will shrink the size of your prostate. So when you do that, of course, you have a smaller target
Exactly.
for the radiation.
I'm not looking to get it done. I mean, I actually would prefer to do it in 6 months or even a little bit more than that. I'm not looking to get it done. She did say, like, let's just do it in 3 months. And I was a little bit taken aback because I wasn't prepared for that. I really would rather wait for 6 months unless I'm being stupid.
Why? Why would you want to wait when you have some good advice? I had mine after 3 months. I did it as my initial treatment. But if your PSA is going down, and it appears to be, your prostate is shrinking, it's a good target. That's when you want to do, when it's a good target. To wait much longer also gives the cancer a further chance, even with ADT, to outlast the ADT. So I don't know if you have a good reason to not want to do it.
I guess I just want to put off as long as I can. I'm just not excited about radiation. And the prostate is one thing, but the lymph nodes, because it's up in my abdomen. So part of it is that they have to do a pretty big target. She said it would be about half of my torso. And so she's saying, there's going to be some collateral damage, and she kind of rattled through it. And I'm anxious to talk to Dr. Lau. Now, if Dr. Lau, who is I think a fabulous radiologist from what I can tell, he's on Dr. Schmolwitz's team. If he says the same thing like Todd, be smart, do it in 3 months, then no questions asked, I'll do it in 3 months. So this is a little premature because, like in a week, I'll have his input, and I'll also have Dr. Schmolwitz's additional input after all of my MD Anderson activity. I just was in MD Anderson last week, and they did some additional scans at that time.
So, Mark Valence, just FYI, Mac radiated me after 2 months. I started but now this was in the dark ages, of course. I got my November 2007. I got my first shot, and then they started the radiation in the middle of January. So maybe the thinking is a little more, but generally, from what I've seen, it's been like 2 to 3 months.
Okay.
I would tend to agree with Phil. Why wait? If the hormone therapy is doing its job and you can nail it, the sooner the better. It's not going to make any difference to the side effects whether the side effects are going to be the same for you if it's the same doctor doing it in 3 months or in 6 months. To me, there seems to be an advantage to do it earlier, provided that the ADT has had enough time to work.
Well, I think part of Mac's idea was, as someone else just said, to shrink it as much as possible before you went in there with the radiation, and that's why, in my case, at least 3 months and maybe more.
Did you have a large prostate, Mark? How big was it?
I don't remember the numbers, but he was worried about the margins, so he wanted it to shrink so that when he went into the radiation, he wouldn't be damaging anything else.
Right. You see, and in my case, I had a very small prostate, 20, I think it was 21 or 22. So that might be a factor, Todd. Do you know what size your prostate is?
I don't.
Okay, so that might be that's a really good point that Mark's brought up, and you might want to ask him, is it a function of the size of the prostate? And check with Mayo at MD Anderson, but certainly check with Lau but if you could start earlier, I'd encourage you to do it. That would be
one last thing. This might sound silly, but part of it too is that we actually have 2 big trips, one in September and one in October. And obviously that's secondary to doing the right thing. But if everything was equal to do it in, say, 3 months versus doing it in 6 months, that would be ideal from that standpoint. But again, if Dr. Lau and Dr. Schmolwitz come back to me and they say, no, you need to cancel the trips, we need to do it, But then that brings me to my next question, which is, let's say that I did do it in, say, 2 months or whatever. She said it's going to be just over 2 months. What'd she say? 42 treatments. How will I be after that? Will I be kind of good to go? Will I be kind of sick? Will I be,
So one thing I would say to you is, please be sure to do this somewhere that's convenient. So if you've got a house in Chicago, there's no reason to do it in Houston if you don't have a place to live in Houston and you got to rent somewhere.
Agreed. 100%.
It just doesn't make sense because it's equally good. Number one. Number two, how are you afterwards? I exercised every day during my sessions, and I was fine. And most guys, I was talking to somebody who's going through it right now. I can't remember who it was. Maybe they're on the call right now. But as long as you exercise, you should be fine. I mean, some people have a bit of have some issue with their gut during it, but there are measures that you can take. I mean, by and large, you should be fine. I mean, I don't think David Muslin has his hand up. Go ahead, David. You're muted.
Still muted.
There
How's
you
that? Can you
go.
hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, how about now? Does that work?
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you. Go on.
Sorry about that. So three things. Number one, I for my radiation, I had the shit kicked out of me, no pun intended. So I would plan a month after you were done of just recovery, just in case. Number one. Number two is I would do the radiation sooner than later. And the third question I have for you, Todd, is I know you're talking to MD Anderson and with University of Chicago, and the question I would have for the group is, how long do you keep two doctors going at the same time? Can you keep two quarterbacks going at the same time, and when do you drop one? That's the question I have for you, because it can get confusing talking to so many docs.
Well, I don't know the answer to it, but I will say this. I was really, really glad that I went to MD Anderson because I think I might have told the group, after I signed on with Dr. Schmowitz, knowing that he's a wonderful doctor and I'm very, very comfortable with him. But he even encouraged, it, and I did learn a lot. I did learn from them that I don't have anything in my bone at all. They, up until then, they thought I had something in the T9, which I do not. But I also learned that it wasn't a Gleason 8, it was a Gleason 9. So those reasons alone. But had I not gone to MD Anderson and not, I now know that I was at the best hospital, I think considered the best hospital for cancer in the country. So even if I don't use them, way worth the effort. But it would be tremendously inconvenient. I mean, my wife and I would go down there and we'd get a place to stay, a nice place and stay there for 2 months. That would be okay. But yeah, I'm right here in Chicago in the summer, and we're in Florida in the winter, and so possibly Dr. Guanchel if it was going to be that late, but likely it'll be here in Chicago. And I also found out that because even though I'm in Chicago, I'm northwest suburbs, and the hospital is way on the south side, and it's literally a 4-hour round trip. So even with that, we would get a place in the city for a couple of months, which is also fine. But Dr. Schmowitz has a person that he trained at Good Shepherd Hospital out by right by where I live that did a friend of mine. And Dr. Schmowitz said, yes, you can absolutely have him do the radiation because I trained him and he's excellent. And so that's one of the things I'm hoping that he'll say to me as well, assuming that doctor is still at Good Shepherd. So we'll see what happens with that.
Got it. Great to see.
I'm curious, what did Dr. Guancho think about radiating that wide area, upper pelvic and periaortic regions? Was she okay with that?
So I have not I've reached out to her and she has not gotten back to me yet. And I haven't pushed it real hard because I want to have these two video conferences that I'm having with Schmowitz and Lau. So, and that's not, that one is on the 23rd, the last one. So as long as I talk to Dr. Guancho before that, then I'll have kind of all my ducks in a row. But I think my belief is that I'm going to have some damage. There's no way that they can just hit, just hit the cancer cells. So I don't know.
Well, did you ask what alternative treatments might be appropriate for those abdominal or nodes?
I did ask Dr. Mayo, and she said that's not, that's not her area because she's radiation, right? So she said, talk to Dr. Hahn, and obviously I'll be talking to Dr. Schmolwitz and also Dr. Guanchel about that exact, what options do I have?
Yeah. Personally,
I,
I would be worried about those side effects. They're telling you right up front there's going to be consequences. Did you ask specifically what they would be? It sounds like you could have
oh yeah.
some serious bowel toxicity.
Yeah, did I not? I don't think what I sent you had that in it, did it, Len? I don't recall. I
No.
do have all that. She went through it verbally, and I also have it all in writing.
So
And you're okay
let's
with it?
somebody, one of the moderators, and I'm not sure which one, says that they've had 3 med-oncs for over a year, and that in answer to David's question about how long do you keep these guys up in the air, was it Ben or was it Joe?
Peter. It was Peter.
Oh, it's Peter. It was Peter who put that in. Peter, go ahead. Give us some wisdom on how you keep all your quarterbacks happy.
Now, they don't talk to each other, but I talk to all of them. They all have different views, and as your disease gets pretty complex and nobody has the right answers, they're all experimenting. You want to keep a stable of docs on your team if you can, if your insurance will let you do it. So I consult with all of them, and they all work for me. 2 of them are GU medical oncologists, and one's a generalist here on the ground, and they trust me, and it works for me. And I'm not about to let go of anybody. It's not confusing at all.
Good, thank you.
Okay. Anything else, Todd?
No,
Got a few guys.
I'll definitely report back after the 23rd. I'll definitely jump back in and let you know everything I found out, and be looking for your guys' advice at that time for sure.
I just want to say one thing, if I may, before we move on, which is, Todd, it's such a pleasure to see you in a much more relaxed and confident situation than you were when you first came to us. And I mean, for us, that's really rewarding because we've done what we set out to do, which was really to make you your best advocate and put you in charge. And now you're coming to us, for a little navigation here and there. But it's great. It's great to see you, and hopefully Libby feels the same way, that you guys are feeling good about this.
Yeah, no, I think having you guys as a resource has just been really refreshing and helpful and encouraging. And so I haven't been here a lot, just because I've been literally running around getting scans, and we had a trip. We had 2 trips in the last 3 weeks between Houston and back to Chicago and back to Florida, and so it's been a bit of a whirlwind. But no, I feel good, and I feel confident, and I'm strong, and I'm dialing in my diet very aggressively in terms of making sure that I'm doing myself a lot of good with the food that I eat and whatnot. So yeah, I'm feeling good about stuff. I'm strong.
Right.
So
All right,
thank
Todd. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Can we go to let's see, Pat Martin?
Just a real quick update. I got the results back from my biopsy, and there's no neuroendocrine, no sign of neuroendocrine activity in my thing. So took a load off my mind.
Yeah,
So
that's great news.
I go up tomorrow and get a couple spots on my lower back radiated and get rid of them. Hopefully get rid of some pain in my legs, and then go back up on Friday and get a couple of chemo infusions and be good for another 3 weeks.
Okay.
The only thing I want to say, Pat, is that, and I don't want to be Job's comforter, but I want you to keep it on your radar, is that what we know with neuroendocrine is it can be in one place, but it may not be in another.
Yep.
And just be aware of that. So, if they have any other spots that can come up and your cancer's acting weird, it's worth biopsying just to make sure, and ask Dr. Schweitzer to keep an eye on your endocrine markers.
I will. They've been very responsive to me, both he and all his team.
What
Great.
chemo are you on?
So thanks.
What chemo?
Right now I'm doing carboplatin and
Docetaxel?
cabazitaxel.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Pat, this is John. It's really nice to have a discussion, generate some ideas, and hear back results in such a short amount of time. You're really getting things done.
They are very responsive to me. I call them up in the middle of the week, and I get an answer. One time before I got away from the computer, I sent her a question, and she replied to me within 5 minutes. We know each other by first name, and they're very responsive. So that's all I had.
Okay, great. Thanks, Pat. We all hope you do well with the chemo and the radiation.
A quick question, Pat. What's going on with the the radiation? You were going to have some radiation to address some spot radiation to address the masses. Is that continuing?
Yeah. Yeah. I can't remember. I could look it up. L2 or L3.
Yeah.
The nerves coming out of it feed my legs, and I've got a lot of leg pain. So, yeah, they're gonna go ahead.
When?
Tomorrow.
Oh, right. Okay. And a single, as I remember, you said they were going to do it in one shot, right?
Yep. Yeah. I was anticipating 5 or 8, and they said no. We've done the studies and looked at the studies, and one at this dose. He says we might have to go back and hit it again, but that's down the road. So, yeah, one spot radiation.
Peter Kafka. Peter Kafka, any advice for Pat Martin on cabazitaxel and carboplatin?
All right, and Pat's amazing. He's a champ. I mean, he's been through a lot of stuff, much more than me. I don't know. I mean, it wasn't fun for me, but he seems to be tolerating it. He's on here every week. It's I mean, my hat goes off to you guys. It's amazing what you're doing.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're able to tolerate it, that's amazing.
It's touch and go at times, but
that never complains.
I'm getting strength from other than me, so it's good.
Good.
Okay, Pat, we've got to move on. We're going to go to Neil Sundstrom.
Hello, good evening.
Hi, Neil.
Good evening.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to give you an update. I haven't been here for a little while because I've been pretty busy with a lot of things here that have to do with this. So just for a refresher, last year, the end of last year, so to move back, I had my prostate out in 2013, and it was undetectable PSA with nothing for 9.5 years. And then last year, a little bit of detectable PSA. It's very, very low. It throughout last year rose to 0.013. So it's very low. And but the doctors, Dr. Carroll, I go to Dr. Carroll, and he suggested that, we wait for it to, until it gets to 0.2, and then do something about it. And I was referred to at UCSF there to Dr. Fang, the radiation, for radiation consultation. And he differed with Dr. Carroll in that he felt it was important to get at it sooner than later. And my doctor down here, I use my urologist, and had referred me to a radiologist here I live down here in San Jose. And that radiologist and my urologist also concurred that they felt getting there earlier was better. So when we talked last year, I was kind of in the dilemma: what do I do? Do I wait, or do I not wait? I made the decision to go ahead with radiation. So the steps that I took along the way there were to get a PSMA scan, which showed nothing. I did get the genetic test in February, which showed nothing. Basically, I have no, it's neutral. I guess they call it neutral. Nothing there. And in the meantime, Dr. Carroll had gone to get my Decipher score from the material of my prostate from many years ago. They went through a couple of iterations with it because the material was so old that it didn't give them any information. But I just got the Decipher score back with I'm in the very low risk category. And just as a reminder, I was a 3+4 originally in 2013. So my risk is relatively low. I still have the low 0.013. So all in all, I decided to start radiation, and along with that, and thanks to you guys, heard about Orgovyx as or Govix, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but as an alternative to some of the others. And so I suggested that to my doctor, and he agreed. And again, thank you guys for helping me be my best advocate. And so I started Orgovyx on March 18th, March 18th, and then started my radiation last week. So I've had 5 sessions last week and 1 today. So I've got, it's 39 sessions, so I've got a ways to go. I won't get another blood test, PSA test, until late June, due to the fact that, they feel that the low Decipher, low risk, low PSA, targeted radiation, and the Orgovyx, which I'll take for 6 months. So they felt that, this targeted radiation was the way to go. So I started that, and I feel good about my decision so far. And that kind of, I think, gets you up to speed on what I've been doing here.
For your updating us. Let's see. Any questions for Neil before we move on?
So, Neil, 2 things. One is just try and get your exercise in every day. If you can, a walk or something, because it'll catch up with you after a while. It sort of nails the marrow in the hips, and people tend to get a little tired as it progresses. And I wonder if anybody else has any advice for Neil in the midst of radiation, anything they learned, anything they can suggest to him?
Strength training. It's a kind walking is fine, but your bones are taking a big hit here with the androgen deprivation and radiation. Good time to do a little. You don't have to do heavy weights, but you have to do some weight-bearing exercises that will be helpful in your keeping your bones safe.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you. I ride my bike at 3 to 4 days a week. I'm going off tomorrow morning for a good ride with some buddies. We do that 3 or 4 days a week. And I just renewed my membership at the club where I haven't been for 3 years due to due to the pandemic that we had. But yeah, it's my intention after tomorrow to get there. And Phil, thank you, because strength training is something that I'm concerned about. I know that from bike riding I'll get work that hip area a lot, but it's also the rest of my bones I know I need to keep that in. So thank you for that.
Neil,
Thanks,
this
Ray.
is John. Halfway through my radiation treatment, I started to get diarrhea, and sometimes it could not wait. And so if I was out running or bike riding or something like that, I had to be ready with, toilet paper or paper towels. And so I had to start carrying that stuff around with me because I could rarely get through an outdoor exercise program without sudden diarrhea. If it does happen, you go on a low fiber diet.
Yeah, thank you. I am starting that low fiber already. And my doctor, the radiation doctor, I'm meeting with him on Thursday. He's got a written out diet for me, so I'm gonna get that going sooner than later. But I appreciate that, and I think that's the next step. Appreciate it.
And it corrects afterwards. Hopefully it's not a permanent thing, but it can happen during the radiation.
Yep. Okay.
Yep. Low fiber and no spicy foods, Neil.
No
Okay.
spicy. Henry, what was that link you just put in there? Something to do with this?
Dude wipes. They're
Dude, what?
impregnated with aloe vera and vitamin E. They're delightful for sunburned anuses like I had during my radiation. I take them with me everywhere I go. And they're in Todd, my man from Chicago. They were invented in Chicago. Dude wipes. They're righteous.
Okay.
What are they
Okay.
called?
That could be that. I just got to tell you, that could be the editor's pick for this week. Dude wipes.
Dude wipes. They should sponsor AnCan. I need to send them a note.
Okay, go for it, Henry.
Are they any better than the Huggy wipes or whatever they call those things, the baby wipes?
Huggy wipes aren't flushable, Lynn. Dude wipes are flushable, and they're extra large. They're like one, and for a husky fellow like me, they cover a lot of territory, and you use one at a time, and they're flushable.
Okay.
Okay.
Can't beat that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Let's see.
Yeah. Thanks,
We're going
everybody.
to go to Jerry Pelfrey.
Okay. I don't ask too many questions here, but this is more on the side effect side. I am getting very frustrated with my short memory loss. And I was wondering how everyone else is dealing with this side effect from ADT and Eligard, where, my God, I'll say something to my wife as we're driving. I get out of the car and I ask her the same thing over again. Hot flashes I can handle. After 4.5 years, it's, you're just used to it. But boy, this short-term memory seems like it's possibly getting worse as the longer I'm on ADT. So that's my question to the whole group. Any suggestions on short-term memory loss with ADT and Eligard? I'd appreciate it. Thank you, Len.
Yeah, can you afford to take a drug holiday on the ADT, Jerry?
My last PSA last month was 0.09. I'm due for my shot June 1st, which will be my next PSA. So, Dr. Singh told me when he diagnosed this at Mayo that I'd be on Zytiga or some other form for the rest of my life. So I'd certainly ask him. I was wondering about that, but I don't know if that's possible for me.
Right.
So are you on Eligard alone, or what'd you say about Zytiga?
No, I'm on Zytiga with Eligard being every 3 months.
You might want a couple of things that occur to me. One is you might want to discuss monotherapy, abiraterone.
In other words, drop the Eligard.
Right.
Okay.
Another thing you might want to ask him is, because it may help you, possibly switching to darolutamide, because it will have less impact on your on the receptors in your brain. And that could be a definite benefit to you if he can get you onto darolutamide. And then again, like with David Muslin and Len and Peter, they've all done monotherapy darolutamide and had success with that. So those are all options. And I would be discussing all of them with him. And if he's a little resistant, you have to be a little pushy, because some of these doctors are not, it's not something they've done before.
No, I know.
And if you ask Dr. Shmulewitz, he's only got 2 guys on there, but both of them are doing really, really well. So the next time somebody comes into Dr. Shmulewitz and says, "How about monotherapy darolutamide?" he's going to be a little more open. David Muslin's a trailblazer for us. Now, the other thing that I want to say to you, ask you, is what sort of mental brain exercises are you doing daily? Do you do Sudoku? Do you do word puzzles? Do you do anything that forces you to use your memory on a daily basis?
Unfortunately, not now. We moved to Tucson and we're not even in our new home yet. We're staying at an Airbnb. So over the last couple of months, because we had to pack our own house for moving. Luckily, in Mexico, you don't move furniture. It all stays.
Jerry, let me stop you.
Yep.
Look, those excuses don't wash with me. You should know that by now. You've got a tablet. You can take 20 minutes each day, and you can do stuff that forces you to use your memory and stuff
Right.
that is fun. You can go on and you can find puzzles. I mean, I made myself play a rubber bridge on the computer every night, so that I had to try and remember the cards that have been played. I mean, I think, and maybe some of the guys on here can make suggestions, but there are daily puzzles that you can do. And if your memory is going, then you've got to work on bringing it back. And you do that with those daily mind puzzles. You take 20 minutes every day. Anybody got suggestions for the puzzles?
Oh, I've got several of them, and because Debbie uses them all the time, so I get them on my laptop too. So it's not.
Okay.
You're right. I just got to kick myself in the ass to do it. I prioritize exercise. So there's an hour to an hour and a half right away. So, then another 20 minutes, then another, it
Okay,
seems
but
like,
cut back 20 minutes on your physical exercise and take 20 minutes of that physical exercise for your brain exercise. That's
all right,
cool.
all right.
John, Phil, did you want to say something on brain exercise?
Actually, I wanted to jump to the medications you talked about earlier, if you don't mind, because with the advent of Relugolux, because you can cycle in and cycle out very quickly. A good idea potentially is your ADT that he's on right now has long lingering effects, 3 months at least. But if he can switch over to Relugolux, the possibility is he could be off for a while, maybe relieve some of that brain fog, go back on it, and it'll quickly get you back down to the 0.9 that he's at now. So that might be another approach to. And the other thing I had was there are other drugs that you may be taking that also can impact your brain fog. And so I would take a careful look at what you're taking. Some of the drugs, some as easy as ones that help you pee better, do have some brain impact. So look at what the other drugs you're taking are. It might have a compounding effect on your memory.
Are you talking about like tamalosin?
Yep.
Well, I've been taking that since almost the whole time, 4.5 years. I'd love to stop that. I've tried a couple of times, and it just goes back to being incontinent. Kind of drives me crazy, but because I hate being on drugs, and especially if one works like this where I can't do something to stop it. But anyway, I was just wondering, and Rick, you were great. Thank you. I needed that kick. But what have other people done? I mean,
I found Zytiga kicked me in the head. It felt like a mule or something. When I switched to darolutamide, my head cleared up miraculously. I still have some memory issues, but it was nothing like being on Zytiga.
Wow. Thank you, Peter. That's really a good suggestion, backed up by your experience. Thank you.
Yeah, and I can second that advice. Jerry, I switched from Zytiga to darolutamide, and I think David Muslin did the same. And all three of us felt that we could think straight, think more clearly after we got off Zytiga and on to darolutamide.
Okay, thank you. That's all I need, Glenn.
All right.
I have a question because that's the first time. I mean, I know a lot of side effects from not a lot, but a number of Flomax tamsulosin side effects, but never heard that it contributes to brain fog before.
Well, I would say look it up. I ended up having to change to a different drug that would impact me less. So some of the
Fantastic.
drugs have better side effects than others
Right.
to allow you to
No,
pee
that's
well.
great tip. Great tip. I mean, I don't know. Dr. John is usually our expert on drug side effects. Jim Marshall, you had your hand up.
Yes, anyway, I was on Zytiga for 5 years, no problem at all.
Yeah.
We're
Well,
all individuals.
everybody's different. Everybody's different. So
Because right
that's
now,
good to know.
from what I'm hearing, I'm getting a double whammy with Zytiga and Flomax or tamsulosin, both of them. So good suggestions. I'll get with Dr. Singh at Mayo and we'll discuss it.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Jerry, you're not taking any sleep medication, are you?
No. No, I
Okay,
tried
good.
melatonin and I didn't like it. It didn't help me. So no.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Robert Glover, are you still with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
Okay, you're up.
Yeah, just a quick update. I finished my sessions of IMRT just this past Friday.
Yay!
So that was nice. My medical oncologist had originally wanted. I'm on been on Firmagon ADT since November. So he started me well before the radiation treatment. He had wanted me on abiraterone, but my insurance, of course, denied it because that's what they do. But my radiation oncologist, one of my regular meetings with him after treatment one day, said, "Oh, you should be on abiraterone. Why aren't you on abiraterone?" I said, "My insurance denied it." So he said, "Go check out Cost Plus Drugs and self-pay." And it turns out from Cost Plus Drugs, I can get it for less than what my copay would have been if my insurance had approved it. So I actually just started that today because I just got back over the weekend. So
Are
that's
you
where I am. I'm
taking,
feeling fine so far. So
Rob, are you taking prednisone with it?
yes,
And
yes.
how much, how much and how often?
The abiraterone is, correct me if I got the wrong number of zeros, 250 milligrams with low-fat breakfast,
Right. That's
right?
good. And how much prednisone are you taking?
I don't have that with me. I remember they said it was a small amount
Yep.
because of the small
So
dosage.
so you can take it. Some people take 2.5 twice a day, 5 once a day.
I think it's 5 milligram once a day, but I
Could be,
don't have it right here with me, so I'm not sure.
could be. It could be 5 twice a day, but they've found that that
No,
isn't really necessary anymore. And the other thing is that if you are taking it once a day, the general wisdom is it's better to take it in the morning than in the evening.
the prednisone.
Yes.
Affirmative on that.
You
Affirmative.
take it at the same time as abiraterol.
Well, I don't know. I'm not sure on you're on that 250. Some of the guys are using that 250. Can you take the prednisone? Do you take the prednisone at the same time or not? Dennis, Korea.
Yes, I do, and I'm on 2.5 milligram prednisone with the low
Okay.
dose Abby, a
Okay.
low fat breakfast.
I don't have the low dose, Abby, but I've always taken my 2.5 prednisone at the same time that I'm eating breakfast, not along with my abiraterone, because they say you need to eat some food with the prednisone.
Okay. And then you take another 2.5 at night?
No,
Oh,
no,
you're only taking 2.5 in total.
yes,
Wow.
I have
I
been
haven't heard.
since the
Wow.
start.
That's really low. Are you sure it's not a 5?
Yep, positive.
Wow.
That's what I take, Rick. 2.5 once a day.
Wow. That's the least I've heard. Great. Okay, the less you need. If you can get away with it, the less you take, the better you are.
Yeah, I only take 2.5.
Oh, wow. Okay. Good to hear all of this.
Yeah, and if you take prednisone late in the evening, it could create some sleep problems for you. So you're better off taking it in the morning with food, as someone said. Okay, is there anyone who we didn't get to who said they needed time?
Yeah, this is Steve.
Oh, yeah,
So
Steve, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, no, that's all
Go
right.
ahead.
That's all right. So quick update. So part one, I just had my annual wellness exam, and my blood pressure, CBC, BMP and lipid were as good as they've ever been. So I am now off my blood pressure medicine and therefore I'm not on any prescribed medication right now. Also, so part two, I had 3-month Eligard infusion on April 28th, 3-month, thanks to Rick's recommendation. And actually that works well because in August I'll spend the entire month hiking and camping in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. So, but I've had no side effects at this point. At the time of my the April 28th infusion, my PSA was 0.18, which was the highest it's been since my prostatectomy in December 2020. And so far, no side effects. I do walk 5 miles a day at a 4 to 4.5 mile an hour pace. And in terms of keeping the mind sharp, I am learning to play the ukulele. So that's it for me. And thanks,
Well,
Rick, for that recommendation.
okay. Well, what I can say is when Jimmy G gets back from Scotland, you have to tell him, you can message him that you're starting to learn the ukulele, and maybe he'll give you a few good tips because he's
Well,
like a
okay,
professional ukulele player.
okay, that's great. I learned because May 11th I turned 64, and I wanted to be able to play when I'm 64, and I was able to do that and capture video and send that to family. So
Okay.
Len, I had
Okay.
All right,
suggested I brought.
Steve, we're going to move on to Bob G. Go ahead, Bob.
Okay,
And
thanks.
then Phil.
I came in a little late. Just a couple things. So for months my white count's been low after chemo. It's finally come back, but my PSA has been going up. So mid-January was 0.48, and just recently it's 1.75, and that's after trying switching from prednisone to Dex with the Abbey. So, texted with my doc, and they're going to be trying to get insurance authorization to start pembrolizumab, Keytruda. So I guess over the next month or so, I'm going to have to switch to one of the lutamides and wean myself off of. We were talking about prednisone. I'm going to have to wean myself off that. So looks like Keytruda is in the near future for me.
Bob, do you have any of the markers for Keytruda?
Yeah, my biopsy came back with MSI high tumor mutation burden, MMR low.
Yep.
So.
All right. Yep. You sound like a good candidate. Sure hope it works for you.
Yeah, me too. And Rick, I'll have those updated things for you in the by email tomorrow.
Thank you. Whenever Dr. Bob has been kind enough to put together some guidance for us around dental and mouth issues when you're on some of the drugs that you guys take, and we're going to put them in a blog post to make them available. It'll be easy. I assume that you are talking with Peter Kafka.
Yeah.
Are you talking with Peter Kafka?
Yeah,
Yes, and Keytruda is one of those drugs. Yes,
Yep.
we've talked.
Yeah, I sent him a almost finished draft. The new one, the most recent's not much different, but
great work. Great work.
Yeah,
Hey, Bob, I have a question for you, Bob. I was having lunch with a woman with breast cancer the other day who said she was on Prolia for 5 years, and her doctor said, no, you can't take that drug anymore. Number one. Number two, she said they gave her some kind of infusion to help her wean off of the Prolia. I never heard of either one of those situations. Have you?
Well,
or has anyone?
Well, Prolia or Xgeva, eh, I believe
Same drug.
you're not supposed to go cold turkey because of the way they work. So I think they suggest going on to, if you're going to leave that, to go on a bisphosphonate for a while.
Really? And what about the idea that you shouldn't take it for more than 5 years?
Yeah, that part I
Is
don't,
that
that
because of the
part,
risk of ONJ?
I don't know if that's the reason. I mean, the risk is pretty low. You're talking maybe 2%, but um, the stuff is so new that I don't know if they know for sure. I mean, even the bisphosphonates, they say you should take only for a certain amount of time and then stop. So, but I
Yeah.
would think that they probably want to. You don't want to cold turkey off of Prolia. I know that, and especially Xgeva. Yeah, if
Lynn,
you
I
read
had told
the
you I need some time.
yeah, if you read the literature, it talks about rebound with Prolia and Xgeva. So,
What are the
So
side effects if you do come off too quickly and you're on denosumab?
um, I think you could have spontaneous fractures,
Okay.
Yeah.
if I remember correctly. It's been a little while since I read all that.
anyone here been on Xgeva for 5 or more years? No?
Len, I had told you I needed some time.
Yeah, sure.
Oh,
Go ahead, Phil. We just wanted to finish up with Bob.
yeah,
Okay.
one of the side effects listed on is fractured spine after stopping treatment. So again,
Hmm.
I think it's simply a matter that you can't just cold turkey. You got to do something to kind of almost like weaning off of prednisone.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to do a little research on that. Thanks, Bob.
Sure.
Go ahead, Phil.
I want to thank the men for hanging in. I've got a rather unique situation. Um, I began my prostate cancer journey in 2010, but I want to take you up to the current day pretty quickly. I have several metastatic nodules in my lungs. Some show up in a PSMA scan, some have shown up via biopsy. I'm on Relagolix and darolutamide right now. My PSA is very low. It's 0.045, I think. Never had a high PSA for that matter. But the cancer keeps on growing in my lungs. Right now, I have two great oncologists, Dr. Dorf and Dr. Rettig. They're both in the West Coast here. And I also have a high tumor burden, like you had just talked about, Bob. And I'm probably going to start Keytruda on Wednesday. But we've also talked about beginning chemotherapy. My concern is the nodules are growing rapidly. They are prostate cancer, and so I'm not sure I have the time. Oh, I also had my upper left lung removed last year from pretty large nodule. And now I've got two more growing in the lower left. I have one positive one on the upper right. So more prostate cancer than I ever would want in my lungs. So I may not have the time to go through true treatments because right now, Dr. Dorf had suggested I go on um, chemo and then Dr. Reddick suggested, because I have this high TMB, to go on, try out Keytruda first. But with the growth speed of the nodules, I just have to pick the best and likely most efficacious treatment. So don't know if you have much experience in this area. I don't, but
So did you establish that this was not small cell disease from the
yes,
biopsy?
it's not neuroendocrine. We did some testing, and well, I can't say it isn't, but the testing that we did suggests that it was not.
Okay, I mean, again, and I said this before, this was the sad thing that we experienced with Herb. Neuroendocrine can be in one place, but not in another.
Okay.
And so it's not like regular metastasized prostate cancer where it is homogeneous. So, just it's always worth keeping in your mind that there could be some neuroendocrine in there, especially with your, what did you say your PSA was right now?
0.047.
0.047 or 0.47?
No, 0.047.
0.047. So it's so the cancer's really growing. Cancer's
Some of it
really
is
growing.
actually.
What about did when was the last time they sequenced you, and what did the sequencing show up?
What kind of sequence are you talking about? I'm sorry.
Genomic.
They did it when I had my my upper lobectomy and my upper left lobe taken out, and
When was that?
This was in September.
So, like 9 months ago, like about 9 months ago.
Yeah.
And nothing showed in that, and nothing showed in the mutations.
Well, the only thing that showed is that PL1D or whatever it is, where they're looking for the Keytruda to possibly help with the heavy burden tumor burden. So
Anti-PD-1, yeah. So
I'm at about 10.5 times.
Right, but you weren't. It didn't show that you were MSI high.
No.
No. Well, I mean, again, especially given that this is moving so quickly and changing, if there was a spot that was easily biopsyable, I might get another soft tissue biopsy again.
I had one about a month and a half ago.
And so, could you send that to for analysis?
I could, but my concern is I need to take some action soon. They're growing so quickly that if I don't do something, the analysis takes 2 or 3 weeks, and then it may not tell me anything new that I don't know already.
Well,
so
I would do it anyway, just in case it shows. And the idea of starting the pembrolizumab is a possibility. I would also say that you're more likely. I can't give you the medical advice, but if it was me, I probably would expect better results out of the chemo. What chemo does Dr. Dorf want to use?
They're talking about, I should know it off the top of my head. What's the basic one?
Docetaxel.
Docetaxel, yes.
Okay, so maybe, given this strange situation with the lung nodules, I wonder whether, cabazitaxel and carboplatin, which is what Pat Martin is doing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when the disease starts to show strange things, the common or garden stuff I'm not so sure about. And I'd be talking to Dr. Dorff about what does she think about, what does she possibly think about that combination of cabazitaxel and carbo. The other thing is, have you ever shown any mutations, Phil? Do you have any, at any time, do you have any mutations that TP53 or P10 or anything like that? Never.
No, nothing like that. And the other thing I didn't make clear is that some of the nodules, which are PSMA avid, are under control with my ADT and my
Yeah.
Nubeca, but others have continued to grow.
Yeah. So we have a guy with that situation. He's not on tonight, and he is doing right now, I think he's doing cabazitaxel and etoposide. Now, he does have some mutations, but he also has this double situation where he's partially avid and partially non-avid.
Mhm.
And what he's done, and Len, you might want to just talk to this, he's done that proteomics, which suggested the etoposide. And again, you could talk to Dr. Dorff about the proteomics. Len, you want to talk about the proteomics for a second?
Well, to be honest, Rick, I don't know a lot about it other than it gives you more information than just the traditional genetic analysis. They kind of catalog all the proteins, which is what the genes are expressing, and it just gives them a better idea of what's driving the cancer and what might be used to block that growth.
Okay, I'll look into it.
Can I make a couple of quick comments?
Sure.
So this is relative to Phil and Dr. Bob too. You know, I've done 9 doses of Keytruda. My 10th is coming up Friday, and then I moving to Minnesota. But I fall in the sweet spot. I meet the criteria, and it seems to be working for me. But I'll tell you, you start messing with the immune system, and the side effects can get weird and wild. And I spoke to 2 guys over the weekend. Both of them are doing Keytruda along with chemotherapy. One we know is Dr. Carlos, and it's really messing them. So this is not an easy drug to deal with. And I know some people do it every 6 weeks with a higher dose. I wouldn't recommend that because I think you really want to watch your blood work every 3 weeks on this stuff before you do the infusion, because it's strange things can happen. And you need to monitor it really carefully and have a really great doc like Dorff or whoever on your side with this thing, because it doesn't work for everybody. It doesn't work at all for everybody. So if it was me, I'd go for the chemo. I did the chemo way before I did the immunotherapy, but that's just me.
Okay, that's good advice. You've got experience in both arenas. I have no experience, and I've asked. I wrote a letter to both doctors today, and basically said, please collaborate.
Yeah.
I don't think I have too many shots at this. Let's pick the best path, and I'll go down it. I'm pretty healthy, so at 80, but I'm pretty healthy and can. I think I can get through most treatments. But
Well, chemo will kick your butt too, but at least it's not. At least the side effects are known. Whereas Keytruda things come out of the blue.
I'm scheduled for a 3-week infusion. I thought that 6 weeks was just too risky for first time.
Right.
And how's it helped you?
It's, as I said, I fall in the sweet spot. I have a genetic mutation and I'm MSI high, and my PSA is dropping down and dropping down. So it's been working. I don't know where it's going. I have no idea. It's taking me to a distant planet, I think. But I'll see if I can write a postcard from someplace.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know
Good.
someone who's also on it. He went from barely being able to get around in a wheelchair to he's out playing golf. He started the first 3 sessions he did every 3 weeks, and then they switched him every 6 because he responded pretty well. And that proteomics, I just sent the paperwork to have that done. It's company's called M-Probe. I don't know what it'll show up, but
It's called M like the letter M probe.
yeah.
Okay.
And I think they will do it, if the insurance covers it, great. If it doesn't, they'll still do it for you for free because they're relatively new and they're looking to get as much data in so they can expand, but what they have in the background. What it'll show, I have no idea. And Peter also mentioned, yeah, people do carboplatinum and Keytruda at the same time, but that's got to be a tough road to go.
You said you're starting Keytruda shortly?
Yeah, I'm guessing probably in July.
And why did they choose Keytruda at this time in your journey?
Because my original biopsy, which was done a little over a year ago, showed that I had all the markers, MSI high, MMR deficient, and high tumor mutational burden. So
all of them,
the genomic report came back showing the markers, and pembrolizumab was the suggested, medicine to use. And it looks like I'm failing abiraterone, probably starting to become castrate resistant. So that's why.
Yeah.
And
Dennis,
Phil, yeah. Phil, there's
Dennis,
another.
hold on a second, Peter. Dennis, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, just a comment for Phil. I didn't hear that they were looking at biomarkers for the neuro. Have you been checked
they've looked.
the biomarkers?
They've done some stain testing on the most recent biopsy results, and they came up negative for neuroendocrine. They haven't done anything on biomarkers at this point.
Chromogranin A.
Yes.
That's one that they looked at that.
Yes.
And the gastrin releasing peptides.
I don't remember that one, but
yeah. Then there's I'm just looking at some notes I made from a session I listened into, and I can't read my own writing, but I didn't hear anything about the biomarkers being checked, so that's why I'm going to make a comment, make sure they don't overlook that. And just for those on Keytruda, many of you realize my wife is on a triple negative breast cancer with undergoing chemo. She is just starting the second phase of this, and it includes she's been on Keytruda for the first phase through that, plus 2 other chemo elements. Now it's doxorubicin, I believe, and Cytoxan plus Keytruda. She's got the first infusion of that, and she has broken out with a terrible itching rash over about 60% of her body. So we are looking soon to talk to the doc. She's on a 21-day schedule now, but we're not going to wait that long. But you're right about the side effects of the Keytruda.
And Phil, talk to Dr. Tanya Dorf about this. There's a professor at UCLA that came out with a mouth swab biological test. It's called Immudex, IMUDEX, that kind of predicts how well you'll tolerate Keytruda. And it's a pretty simple mouth swab, and I think it's still going. It's still around.
IMBUDX.
IMUDEX or something like that. Immudex.
Right.
Yeah,
And probably Dr. Rettig is the better person since he's at UCLA and he's the one that wants to give you the Keytruda, so he's going to be pretty familiar with that test, I think.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Not an easy path sometimes.
Yeah, you got a tough choice there, Phil.
No, but
you
Phil,
got good doctors on your team, so.
Yeah, and I hope we've given you some good ideas here today, Phil, in the last 10, 15 minutes.
Yes, you have. Thank you.
All right, guys, it's really late. I think we're going to close it up. As far as I know, that was our last guy who needed time. So thank you all. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, Len. Thanks for taking care of biz tonight. Good night.
Thanks, Phil.
Okay. I'm sure Dr. John's glad he switched now.
Sun hasn't even set for me.